So there's more on the business issue in the same edition. This comes from another title right to the right of that past article. Business needs to invest in U.S., Obama contends. All right, this is also an Associated Press article. The president, in a speech Monday to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, called for a cooperative relationship with the private sector and argued that government and business have a shared responsibility. Quote, I want to be clear, even as we make America the best place on earth to do business, businesses also have a responsibility to America, end quote. He said, as we work with you to make America a better place to do business, ask yourself what you can do for America. Ask yourselves what you can do to hire American workers, to support the American economy, and to invest in this nation. Obama called for changes in the corporate tax code and increased exports, but he pointedly warned his audience that businesses could not translate those benefits into greater profits and bonuses for those at the top. There's also another article in here. This is about wind production, which has not been at the forefront of Register news lately. This is because it has not been at the forefront of discussion by our current governor, Terry Branstad. So it's kind of refreshing to see that this has not been forgotten. However, this is an Associated Press article. U.S. fast-tracks wind production off the East Coast. This comes from Norfolk, Virginia. The government could issue leases for 4 East Coast wind farms by year's end as part of a streamlined approval process designated to quickly identify the nation's most promising areas for offshore wind energy, the U.S. Department of the Interior said Monday. The Interior Department said the 4 sites it has identified as right for development are off the coast of Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, and Virginia. Environmental groups, including the Sierra Club and the Ocean Conservancy, lauded the Obama administration for moving quickly to develop wind power, while some Republicans said the president's efforts don't go far enough. The 4 states will receive expedited environmental reviews to help fast-track the projects, which are expected to create thousands of jobs. Calls to streamline the process came after the 8-year review that finally resulted in a lease for the nation's first wind farm off the coast of Massachusetts being signed in October. Construction on the 130 turbine project is expected to begin later this year, with operations starting in 2013. However, Salazar said the wind farms would be between 10 and 20 miles offshore, far enough that beach-going vacationers wouldn't have their views ruined. States would receive 27% of total revenues collected by the federal government for projects in federal waters at least 4 miles offshore. So that's the status of wind on the East Coast. It'll be very interesting to see what happens to the status of the wind energy industry in Iowa. I am concerned because while the previous administration was a very strong, and not only strong, but very passionate supporter of wind energy that paid in our moving to number 2 status, there hasn't been the same passion, I would say, or push for wind development that I've seen or heard or even felt from the current state or government administration under Terry Branstad. I'm hoping that maybe I'm mistaken and maybe it's there and I don't see it, or there's a plan. But it would be nice to have an overt show of support for wind energy. I think it's very important for the state of Iowa, for morale, for jobs, for a sense of pride, for the future, for the new generation coming up. I think it's very important to support that industry. Our next issue is the food. We've talked about food, we've talked about food deserts, We talked about high quality food, organic versus non-organic. This is from the Sunday, February 13th, Des Moines Register. Anti-obesity campaign brings vows of change. This is First Lady Michelle Obama, apparently in a foot race. All right. The anti-obesity campaign First Lady Obama calls Let's Move celebrated its first anniversary last week. Is it making a difference? Obama has addressed governors, mayors, school groups, food makers, and other constituencies, urging them to build more bike paths and playgrounds, to serve healthier school lunches, and to make and sell more food that's better for people. She has visited schools across the country to see what changes they are making, from planting fruit and vegetable gardens modeled after her own celebrated White House plot to opening salad bars in their lunchrooms. And she's worked herself into a sweat at exercise clinics with kids. Her year of effort has led to promises of change from beverage makers, food manufacturers, and most recently and perhaps notably, Walmart, the country's largest retailer, to cut the levels of salt, fat, and sugar in their products. Walmart promised to reformulate thousands of its store brand products to reduce sodium, sugar, and fat, and pushes its suppliers to do the same. The company also pledged to cut fresh fruit and vegetable prices, build stores in areas without grocers, and develop a logo for products that meet its health criteria. I believe it's a step in the right direction. All right, so along those lines, there's another article in Monday, February 14th, Des Moines Register, yesterday's Meat Days Bedevil Producers. All right. Efforts like Meatless Mondays are yet another headache for the beef and pork industries. They have been struggling to cope with the soaring cost of corn for feed and to hold on to consumers because of rising retail meat prices. Sodexo's alliance with the Meatless Mondays campaign coincided with an endorsement by Oprah Winfrey, who devoted a week of programs this month to promoting meat-free dieting. Another blow to the meat industry came from the release of the government's new dietary guidelines January 31st. All right, so there's also more on the next page. Let's see. The guidelines call for Americans to cut back on the artery clogging, types of fats found in meat, and replace some meat with fish or other seafood. Those guidelines, coupled with rising prices for beef, pork, and poultry because of soaring feed prices, are likely to combine to reduce meat consumption per capita, said Helen Jensen, an Iowa State University economist. No state has a bigger stake in what happens with U.S. meat consumption than Iowa, which is the largest producer of pork as well as corn and soybeans, crops used primarily for livestock feed. Iowa produced more than $20 billion worth of hogs, cattle, corn, and soybeans in 2009. That's according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The meat industry says the efforts to reduce consumption are misguided and driven in part by animal rights activists. Consumers need the protein and nutrients that beef and pork provide, the industry officials say. And Lerner, this is Sidney Lerner, he's 80, he initiated Meatless Mondays 7 years ago, mainly to promote better nutrition. He borrowed the name from campaigns that the government aimed at the home front during last century's world wars, and that was, I think, a result of rationing during World War I and World War II. We discussed that, I believe, in the recycling episode on how North America drastically cut back in order to support their war